Well, let's talk about all of this with Dr. Peter William Walsh. He's a senior researcher at Oxford University's Migration Observatory. Good morning to you, Peter.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Do you think it's shocking or indeed concerning at all that this migration crisis, and it is a crisis, could be lasting at least 5 more years?
I don't think people are shocked to hear this. It's been going on for 5 years. Other countries that also have quite large numbers of unauthorised boat arrivals, thinking about Italy, Spain, Greece, their crises have been going on for very much longer than 5 years. So there are real questions about actually whether it will be 5 years, 10 years, or maybe even longer. Just a really very difficult issue that lots of governments around Europe are grappling with and struggling to prevent.
Well, a lot of countries are grappling with it. That's because they're getting the arrivals straight into their countries, you know, from Libya, from other countries as well. It seems to be the main route. And you know, who's going to deal with it? But those people are coming often from, you know, war-torn countries, leaving North Africa. People who arrive in the UK shores are already coming from a safe country. I know they're not legally required under asylum international law to claim asylum in the first country, whether it be Spain or Italy or somewhere in Eastern Europe. But, you know, they're perfectly capable of doing so. Do you not think that us being an island nation, we're not in the Schengen area, we're now out of the EU, that we actually could deal with this rather more easily than most of those countries, if there was a will?
Well, I think there is a will. I mean, the government's throwing quite a lot at this in terms of enforcement, in terms of its deterrence policies. There are just questions about whether these are effective and whether they actually work and whether we can do all that much without serious cooperation with the French. I mean, you heard earlier the French are intercepting boats in the water. They are preventing people from leaving the shores. Often then what happens is they take them, they detain them. They don't detain them indefinitely. And then these people leave and they're able to continue onwards.
Or they just escort the rickety boats, overloaded boats like the one which collapsed, which led to 6 migrants dying and 50 being rescued. They escort them to British waters. That's not cooperation. That's passing the buck.
And that's why even the Home Affairs Select Committee came out and asked actually whether the French couldn't do more in terms of intercepting boats in the water. It's easier to make an interception there in terms of preventing the crossing. Even the Home Affairs Select Committee raised questions about France's conduct in that regard, but we've spoken with the French and they don't seem to have much of an appetite for that.
OK, so we often talk about, and this is something the Labour politicians always talk about, and we will talk to Peter Kyle about it in a couple of moments from the Labour, that, you know, if there was more cooperation and that if we worked with the French, we could do more about this. But as you said, there doesn't seem to be an appetite for the French, certainly not in August when everyone's on holiday in France. You know, beaches apparently unpatrolled. What a surprise, loads more boats get through. There isn't an appetite from the French. What can we do? I mean, we can be as nice as we want to them. If they're not going to actually deal with this issue because, frankly, they'd rather get rid of these people, then what can we do about it? Should we be leaving the ECHR, for instance?
Well, leaving the Council of Europe, that would imply that. And, I mean, that would prevent things like the interim measures, the injunction that grounded the Rwanda flight, but perhaps not all that much else because, of course, we incorporated the European Convention on Human Rights into our law. We have the Human Rights Act, and actually that's the primary basis for a lot of the legal challenges that prevent people from being moved.
But we can change the law. I've always found this quite bizarre, this idea that, oh, but it's in law. Whatever the issue, whether it's net zero or this or that, it's in law. The laws aren't handed down on tablets from God. I mean, maybe some people think they are. The laws in this country are made by politicians that we elect who are accountable to us. If we, the people, say, and we've elected a government that said they deal with this issue, and they've still got a big majority, even though they're falling in the polls, we want this issue dealt with, they can pass a law, they can defeat the House of Lords on it because they're the elected accountable body, pass a law to change the law so that the law can't be used by judges and activist lawyers to counter what the vast majority of people want. Why do so many people seem to think that that is a terrible thing to do?
Oh, I don't know if they do. I mean, if people want that, then the government is within its right to change the law. Of course, there's also the question of just because you have a law doesn't make it effective. And we have, of course, the Illegal Migration Act. Now, that proposes to detain and remove all people arriving illegally, not hearing their asylum claims. But just because that's on the books, there's of course this separate practical, often legal question of whether that is indeed practicable. Of course, this raises questions about our detention capacity and, of course, about our returns agreements with other countries, including, of course, Rwanda, currently mired in the courts.
Yeah, indeed. I just feel like it's just going to go on forever. Dr. Peter William Walsh, thank you very much indeed.